What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show, Under Center with Abelson, presented by the Real Spiel podcast. Week 3 is officially here. First 2 weeks in the book. We've already seen some madness, some chaos, some upsets last week, some big time wins, some big marquee matchups. And this week, hopefully, will not disappoint as we also have, some other big games going on. Coming back with another preview. We're going to preview some of this action coming up. I'm going to tell you what I like. I'm going to tell you what I don't like. Had a good bounce back week last week. Went 4-2. I think we are officially like 6 and something. I think we might be like 500 on the year. I don't know my record off the top of my head, but 2-3 in the first week, 4-2 in the second week. So yeah, hopefully we can have another good week. And let's get into some of this discussion. With arguably the biggest game of the weekend, we got Georgia traveling up to Neyland Stadium, Knoxville, good old Rocky Top. Got a nice SEC matchup. I think the number 15 team versus the number 5 or 6 team in the country, whatever Georgia is. A good marquee matchup. I am absolutely torn on this game. I cannot make up my mind about what I like. I think I'm leaning definitely towards one thing. We'll get into that, but just some of the early keys and some of the early things that stand out in this game. Joey Aguilar and that Tennessee offense has, albeit not against great competition, has kind of exceeded my expectations so far. It's been looking good. Joey Aguilar, he's been able to get under center and make a lot of good plays. Again, they played, I think, like East Tennessee State last week or something, so obviously that's not the biggest competition. But Syracuse, that's respectable competition, even though I think they will be towards the bottom of the ACC this year. That is still a power 4 team, and they look good there as well. But yeah, that offense has looked a lot better than I've expected it to. Joey Aguilar is a guy who led the nation in interceptions last year, so I thought there would be some struggle, especially going into a Josh Heupel offense. It's not always the quarterback friendly when you're inexperienced and not used to the system. It's usually a system that takes a little bit to develop and to get into the flow of. But again, they have been looking good. He hasn't been turning the ball over. He's been playing well. But again, that's not against great competition. So the Georgia Bulldogs were coming to town. Competition level is about to go way up. Georgia, obviously, they're going to always have one of the best defenses in the country with Kirby Smart. So I think this is going to be a real test. We are going to get some answers on, is Tennessee for real? Is this just all for show because the level of competition hasn't been there? But when it comes to Georgia, I can never, ever bet against Georgia and Kirby Smart. I just can't do it. The couple times I've gotten burned. Especially in big games, man. I do not know what Kirby Smart. Well, I guess I do know what he says to them in the locker room. If you guys have seen his locker room halftime speeches, you can probably understand why that team, especially when their backs are against the wall, usually always come out and play. He'd be getting those guys fired up. And yeah, man, I know there's some questions with Georgia. Gunnar Stockton hasn't looked as great as he hasn't looked bad, but he hasn't looked as great as I would have expected. Obviously, Georgia last week was they were never threatened, and I know there was a lot of other stuff going on with the rain delays and all this other stuff. They were never threatened, but they didn't pull away from Austin Peay FCS school like they should have. I think the final score was 28-7. I think even Kirby Smart came out after that game and said in an interview, the post-game interview, that Gunnar Stockton is just not playing as good as he would like. He's not playing the way he usually plays in practice. And that's not something you want to see or you want to hear from the head coach going into a crazy environment like Neyland Stadium. That place is one of the best environments in the country when they're good. Obviously, we saw them in the last 2 years against, or 2 years ago against Alabama, how that stadium can go. So I just, again, that's not what you want to hear from your head coach going into this type of game. But I just, again, that Kirby Smart defense against a guy like Joey Aguilar who can be injury prone. Again, led the country in interceptions last year. He hasn't really been threatened this year by a good defense. So we really don't know what kind of quarterback he is. Those first 2 weeks, again, Syracuse is not a team that would have really threatened Tennessee. They just don't have the level of athletes that Tennessee does. So I am extremely curious to see how well Joey Aguilar does play against that Tennessee or that Georgia defense. Like I said, I can't bet against Kirby, man. I think I have to take Georgia on this one. Georgia has beaten Tennessee by 10 or more points the last 11 years. That has to be a head scratcher if you're a Tennessee fan to not even be competitive against Georgia in the last 11 years. 10 or more points, double digits every single time you play them. And again, I think Kirby just has Tennessee's number. And I think Georgia has, I think, although Gunnar Stockton's not playing as great as I think he can play, I think this is a game where Georgia can go in, get the offense going. They do have some talented group of receivers, much more talented group of receivers than they did last year. And again, that defense, the one thing that always travels is that defense, and I think that Kirby Smart defense is going to travel. The line right now is sitting at -3.5. I think this line opened up at 7.5. I think 7.5 or 8.5. When I saw it opened up at that high, I was all over Tennessee to cover that spread. But as I think a lot of people started to notice, hey, dang, that's a big spread, and a lot of money started to go into Tennessee. And obviously that line has come down to 3.5. I like Georgia at 3.5. If it was really more than like 5, I probably wouldn't take it. But 3.5, I think Georgia can go in there and win. I was leaning Tennessee at first, but again, Josh Heupel or this Tennessee offense hasn't really been tested yet. And that's a hell of a test to pass against the Kirby Smart defense. The defense is going to travel. I can't bet against Georgia. I can't bet against Kirby Smart until they prove me wrong. So we are taking Georgia to cover the 3.5 spread. Side bet, I also really love the under on this one. I think it's sitting at 51, 52.5 maybe. I love the under on this. I think this is going to be a good defensive game. Tennessee has a solid defense. Obviously, Georgia always brings in a good defense. So I think the under on this one is at play. Next up, the game that I think was supposed to be what College Game Day was is LSU and Florida. Obviously, Florida got upset by USF last week. And then an hour later, College Game Day announced that they were going to go to Neyland, go to Knoxville, and go to the Georgia and Tennessee game. Has to be a bummer if you're a Florida fan. This would have, or I guess if you're an LSU fan, College Game Day would have been there at LSU. But yeah, Florida obviously had to, shit the bed, losing against South Florida. If you are a Florida fan, I would be a little worried right now. A little worried. You guys had a lot of preseason hype coming into this season. Obviously, DJ Lagway played incredible down the stretch. I think he went 6-0 in all the games he started in last year. I think the hype was warranted. I don't think really anybody thought USF was going to be the Florida team you guys lost to. But USF obviously played an incredible game. They kind of punched Florida in the mouth. And this is a tough spot, man, because LSU, they are bringing in a team that looks improved on the defensive end. Obviously, they had a good defensive outing and played well against Clemson last week. I forgot what directional school they played last week, but they kind of struggled a little bit. They didn't look all the way buttoned up, but coming off a highly emotional game against Clemson, that was a letdown spot. Obviously, they were never threatened to lose, but that was a spot that I could have seen them just kind of take their foot off the gas, especially with Florida looming. But yeah, Garrett Nussmeier, he's definitely in my top 5 quarterback list right now. I think, especially in that first game against Clemson, I really liked the way he was playing, man. He just felt in control. He wasn't making bad decisions. He was taking what the defense was giving him, and I think that's definitely a step in the right direction for his game improvement. Because last year, a lot of times what we were seeing was he was putting his team in harm's situation. He had that gunslinger mentality, that I can get this ball anywhere mentality. And again, we have a small sample size, but it looks like so far this year he's not taking as much risks with his arm and with the throwing. He played an extremely good game against Clemson, and that's probably supposed to be a top 5 defense in the country. So I'm really curious to see if he continues to bring that into the Florida game. Florida obviously reeling. They definitely have a tough schedule coming up in the next few weeks. They play obviously LSU. They play Miami on the road. They play Texas A&M on the road. They also play another ranked team. I'm forgetting. It was a tough 4-game stretch, but they played 4 ranked teams in the next 4 games, and 3 of them are on the road. So they have a brutal schedule. That's what really makes the USF loss hurt, man, because you knew what you had coming into these next 4 games. You knew that one of these next 4 games might have and most likely was going to be a loss. You just could not have had it been USF, because now you're stuck in a position where you play 4 ranked teams in a row, and you are bound to lose. I mean, that's just, I don't think any SEC team can go 4 ranked games in a row without losing one. I think this is going to be a year where we do not see an undefeated SEC team in the regular season. And very well, we might not see 2 undefeated SEC teams, or we might not see a 1-loss SEC team in the regular season. I think it's not far off that every single team in the SEC has 2 or more losses. But yeah, because now, like I said, you're stuck in a situation where LSU, Miami, Texas A&M, you're gonna have to go, because even going 2-2 puts you at 3 losses. You're gonna have to go 3-1 in this stretch to keep your season alive, to keep your playoff hopes alive, to keep Billy Napier in a position to not be getting fired. And that's just this stretch. They play more ranked teams towards the end of the year as well, so that's just a tough spot to be in. Texas was a team that I was thinking of that was on the road, because they play Texas in between Florida and A&M. That's at home. But then they play Georgia. You play Kentucky. That's gonna be a tough game. You play Ole Miss. You play Tennessee, and then Florida State. Man, in a season, like I said, where 2 losses was probably almost guaranteed, one of those losses coming to USF really hurts, because now they almost have to run the table. I think if they only lose 1 more game, they'll be fine. At least, Billy Napier will be fine. I think if they went the rest of the season, finished 10-2, only lost 1 more game, I think they'd obviously be fine. But the way that offense has been looking, I don't have high faith in that happening. DJ Lagway really struggled the last 2 games. Really, he has not looked correct. Obviously, he's missed some time. He had some injuries during offseason and spring ball and fall camp, so he's hopefully still getting up to speed, but the schedule's only getting harder, so he better get right. And this is another defense, LSU. Like I said, their defense looks drastically improved, and if we think it's improved as it looked against Clemson, this is a very tough position for Florida to be in. I'm leaning. I think the line on this one was 6.5. I want to say it was LSU 6.5. LSU minus 7.5. I honestly like LSU to cover this. Them being at home, I think, provides a major advantage. Obviously, Death Valley at night is, I think, in my opinion, the best home environment in the country. Sorry, Penn State, for the whiteout or whatever. I think LSU at night is the best environment in the country. And if Garrett Nussmeier can continue to play ball like he's been playing the first couple weeks, if that defense for LSU is really as improved as we think, I think this is a tough spot for Florida to be in, because they just did not show a lot of fight. Their defense didn't show a lot of effort in that game against USF. So yeah, I'm rolling with LSU on this one. LSU minus 6.5 or 7.5. Um, yeah, gonna take them to cover that spread. Another huge marquee game we have for the weekend is Notre Dame at A&M. A rematch of the game last year. Notre Dame obviously won by I think like 3 points. Uh, Coming into this game, I guess we can start with Notre Dame. This is a team who is looking to not start 0-2 because being an independent without playing a conference championship game, I think that's going to be very, very tough for Notre Dame. I still think they can, but if Notre Dame goes 10-2, especially with the schedule towards the end of the year, they don't really have a lot of huge games like USC and I think Arkansas or USC and Boise State. I think they play USC, Boise State, and Arkansas, which I don't think USC or Boise State or Arkansas are going to be that great as far as resume builders. You can't start 0-2 because Miami and Texas A&M are going to be, I think, the best teams that they play. Going 0-2 in those games, that's going to be tough if we look back at the end of the season and Notre Dame is 10-2, especially without being a conference winner or playing in a conference. I think that could come back to bite them. But yeah, Notre Dame obviously had a bye week trying to bounce back from that Miami loss. I think that was a good time. I think it's dumb to have bye weeks the very first week after your first game. But in this situation, I do think it may help Notre Dame just kind of bounce back, kind of get things resettled. um, I think the key to this game is Jeremiah Love, man. Jeremiah Love, Jeremiah Love, Jeremiah Love. They damn near came back against Miami without Jeremiah Love being a factor whatsoever. Um, I'm a little, I'm, I'm still surprised at the play calling not to get Jeremiah Love more involved, especially in that first half. You have a first-year starting quarterback um, going up against a good defensive line like Miami's, and not getting the ground game going was very surprising to me. So I think they're going to learn from that. I think they're going to feed Jeremiah the ball. I think he's going to have a great bounce back game because, again, going up against a good defensive group like Texas A&M always has, they have a good defensive group and a good defensive line. You're going to have to establish the run to make it a lot easier for CJ Carr because you can't expect a guy like this to just drop back, throw 30, 40 times and beat you with his arm his second time starting. So quarterback's best friend is obviously a good line, but right there is a good running back. Being able to keep the chains moving, being able to get short yard positions, 2nd and 5, 2nd and 6, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, instead of always being in obvious passing downs, I think is the key to Notre Dame winning this game. But again, I was impressed with CJ Carr in the first game. Obviously, the first half was a little shaky, but he did almost pull the comeback against Miami. In that second half, he started playing well, started using his legs, which I was a little surprised by. I didn't know he had, some movability and maneuver to him. But yeah, the way he played in that second half, I think is going to give him a lot of confidence going into this game. And Notre Dame is scary when they're motivated. They're scary when their backs are against the wall, when they're kind of counted out. This is a team that never gives up the fight. So this is, I think, this can be a tough spot for Texas A&M. Obviously, Texas A&M, Marcel Reed, he's looked pretty good in his first couple games. With Texas A&M, I think they're always going to be. They got good key running backs. The defensive line is always going to be sound. This is going to be a group that's going to play tough, that's going to play physical. They're going to come to play, man, and all of this is at Notre Dame. I'm not counting out Texas A&M. I think they, obviously have a very good chance of winning this game. Mike Elko obviously plays a tough brand of football, or coaches a tough brand of football. But yeah, I think Marcel Reed is going to have an excellent game. We're going to need to have an excellent game, obviously. I think, especially with this Notre Dame defense, this defensive line, just the defensive group of Notre Dame, I think his legs are going to have to play an extreme part in this game because I think Notre Dame's defense is their best group. They brought back a lot of guys from last year. I think they have one of the best cornerbacks in the country. The linebackers are good. The defensive line is good. So I think Marcel Reed is going to have to keep them honest and get some chunk yards with his legs to kind of open up the passing game. Because just dropping back and just trying to throw against his defense, I think is going to be pretty tough, especially where he's at kind of in his development. Obviously, last year he came in after the first few games and kind of just took over the starting job. So I want to, just having him drop back 30 times, just throw the ball, I don't think is a recipe to have them win. They do need to get the ground game going. And again, I think if Marcel Reed can do some damage with his legs, that can kind of open up some stuff with the passing game and kind of help them going. But with all that being said, um, Marcus Freeman is starting to become one of those guys that it's just very hard for me to bet against. I was right about the Miami versus Notre Dame game. I thought they would lose that game. But this is not a game I do see them losing. I just don't see Notre Dame starting 0 for 2 or going 0 2 in their first two games, especially being at home. Marcus Freeman, I think he's going to get these guys ready to play. I think he's going to get them fired up. I think CJ Carr has a good game. I think Jeremiah Love bounces back, and I think they actually use him more in the offense. I don't really see Notre Dame losing this game. I think the spread right now is at -6.5. So I do like that. I do like Notre Dame to cover that at home. I think this is going to be a tough physical game, a low-scoring game. I think that's something else to look at is the total under on this one. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think Notre Dame pulls away towards the end, and I do think they take it. Next up, we got Clemson and Georgia Tech. Huge ACC game. Huge ACC game. This game, this game has like physicality written all over it. I think this one is at Georgia Tech. Yeah, this one is in Atlanta at Georgia Tech. Clemson, man, this is a team. I was high on Clemson just like everybody else was coming into this year. They brought back the most production in terms of their starters in the country, and a lot of that production was high level talent. Coming into this year, they had 4 projected first round picks on the defensive line, and obviously Cade Klubnik. The offense just has not looked good, man. It has not looked good to start the season. Against LSU, they only dropped 10 points. Against Troy, they finally they come out with 26 points, but went scoreless in the first half against Troy, 16-0, not even be able to get a point. Cade Klubnik, he just does not look comfortable. He's not getting the ball out on time and on target. He's holding the ball a little too long, forcing the pocket to collapse, and he's kind of just breaking out, trying to run a little too much, not staying poised in there. I don't know exactly what's going on. I don't know if it's the offensive line. I don't really know if it's the receivers not being able to get open, but he just has not looked comfortable at all this year. And against LSU, that's fine. LSU's defense might just be way better than it was last year and might just be for real. But against Troy, to be getting kind of just the offense in general, to be getting pushed around by the Troy defense was very surprising and concerning. And this is another tough test against a tough physical team, man. Georgia Tech, man, they got some dudes on their team. They got some guys, some hard-hitting guys on their team. Just ask Miami after last year. Georgia Tech, they just play such a physical brand of football. This is not one of those games where you can kind of tune yourself up to and kind of get the offense back rolling, because I know Georgia Tech's going to come out and I know they're going to be playing physical. So I think obviously that is the most important key to Clemson and them winning this game. The defensive line, the defense in general has been solid. You hold LSU to 17 points. I know they could have scored more or whatever. They got a touchdown called back, but at the end of the day, they still only scored 17 points. Troy, they held Troy shutless. They shut Troy out in the second half. Troy scored 16 points in the first half. And again, it really wasn't because of the defense is why they scored. The offense was constantly going 3 and out, constantly not being able to take time off the clock. So the defense was just having to stay on the field time after time after time. And eventually, the guys are going to get tired, and you can only do so much defensively when you're constantly having to be out there. So the defense has been solid. The defense has been good enough to win these games, by a considerable amount. It's just been the offense has been letting them down. So obviously the key to the game for Clemson is, going to have to be able to run the ball. That's something they really haven't been able to do at all this year. I think they've ran for a combined 150 yards in the first two games. And that's, running the ball is something, again, Notre Dame. Running the ball is what helps your quarterback out when they're just not having success. Takes a lot of pressure off the quarterback when they can be in 2nd and 5s and 3rd and 4s and 3rd and shorts instead of having to be in obvious passing downs the whole game. So I think Clemson is going to have to find a way to run the ball this year. They obviously lost Phil Maffa. I think the running back that they have is a former cornerback, a former player at another position. But at the end of the day, whether they can find a running game or not, Cade Klubnik, this was the guy who came in preseason second odds in the Heisman. This is a guy who has a lot of experience. This is his third year, second full year starting. Came in half the year for his freshman year. And this was supposed to be the year. He put it all together. So he's going to eventually have to put it all together if Clemson wants to reach the expectations that they had coming into this year. Because as of right now, I don't want to overreact for the first two games. There's still a lot of season left, but they have not met expectations at all this year. So hopefully this is a game they can turn it around. Georgia Tech, obviously, this is a game where they are going to come in with their chin straps buckled up, man. They are going to come in ready to play. This is at home. That Georgia Tech brand of football is just so interesting to me, man, because, they don't really have an elite passing game. They just, again, offensive line just grabs their lunch pail and hard hat, and they get to work, man. That game against Colorado, first game of the year, they come out, turn the ball over the first 3 possessions, and it really didn't matter because the defense showed up, played well. The offense finally started to play Georgia Tech football, offensive line moving, Haynes King making some good passes and getting some run action in. And obviously, that I think that's going to have to be the brand of football they do play against Georgia Tech. Against Clemson. But I think it's going to be tough, in my opinion. I think for Georgia Tech to have success on the ground game just because of that defensive front of Clemson. They just got some dudes up there. So I do think that they are going to have to eventually open up the passing game, find a little success against Clemson with the passing game. Because in my opinion, if they just go in there expecting to try and be able to run the ball down Clemson's throat, I don't think that's a recipe for success for Georgia Tech to win the ball, because they're going to eventually have to, because I think Clemson will just stack the box on Jamal Haynes and Haynes King, forcing Jamal Haynes to throw. But again, this is Georgia Tech. They could very well just find success on the offensive ground, like they always do. But I think the key to to Georgia Tech winning this one is they're going to have to find success through the air and open up the passing game. I think Clemson, this is another weird one that started out, I think, pretty high. I saw a line. I don't know. I was on ESPN and I saw the line last week was -9.5, I think. At -9.5, I loved Georgia Tech to cover the spread. But obviously that line has dropped. I think now we're sitting at Clemson's -2.5. Oh, wow. The Clemson is -2.5. I honestly love Clemson at -2.5. I think earlier it was sitting at -3.5. I think I took it at -3.5, but if that line's dropped to 2.5, for the sake of this pick on the show, I'm taking it at 2.5. You're damn sure I'm taking it at 2.5. Yep, and I'll be damned. The line is at -2.5. I love that for Clemson, obviously. I love that for Clemson. Hey, I take the lines. I take the lines at the time of recording. I can't, once this recording's over, if that line jumps up, that's not on me. I'm recording right now on Wednesday at 7:00 p.m. and this line is at 2.5. I looked earlier and it was at 3.5. So I'm taking Clemson -2.5. I think they do cover. I think their offense finally starts to click a little bit. I think they have a little more success on the offensive side. I think their defense is going to show up like they've been showing up, and I think it's a tough, gritty performance. I can definitely see it being single digits, and I do think Clemson takes it and covers towards the end. So, yep. We got another ranked matchup that at the beginning of the season, I definitely don't think people were expecting. We got Miami versus South Florida. Um, Man, this is. I think this game has gotten a little interesting. If you would have told me at the beginning of the year, um, my pick and takes on this game, I would have probably said, Miami's. This is not even a game they have to look at or worry about. But with the way South Florida has been playing to start the season, I think, in my opinion, they have the best two wins in the country. Obviously, Boise State maybe doesn't look as good as everybody thought they would coming into this year, but that's still going to be a Group of Five contending team to come into the playoffs, and they're still a tough team. And it's the way South Florida beat them. They just went there and dominated them. Really wasn't even competitive. And then obviously last week with the upset at Florida in Gainesville, they just went in there and kind of pushed Florida around. That defensive line was kind of just giving, excuse me, that defensive line was just giving Florida really all the problems. Florida just never looked comfortable. DJ Lagway never looked comfortable. And this team, they're playing extremely well. I know a lot of people are kind of saying this is probably going to be a letdown spot for Florida or for South Florida. But I don't really agree with that. I think they're going to continue to be riding high from those first two games. I'm just not seeing it to win against Florida and then to come into this game flat-footed, without any energy, without any effort. I think that team is just coached extremely too well to be in that position because I think they know what they have. I think they know they have a great opportunity not only to get into the playoffs, but to actually not even just get in there because as a Group of Five representative, they could very well get an at-large spot. So I think they understand what opportunity they have because if they win this, even if they slip maybe one game in the AAC, like against Tulane or something, or they make it all the way to the AAC championship game and they lost to Tulane and that was their first and only loss of the year. If they went 11-1 with wins against Boise State, Miami, and Florida, I mean, they're definitely, I think, a top 10 seed and can get in without needing to win the conference. So again, I think they know what's at play. I think they know they have an opportunity here to do something special. So I think they're going to get up for this game. And this is one of those Mario Cristobal games. This is one of those Mario Cristobal games. Every single year, whether it was at Oregon or his time in Miami, Mario Cristobal loses a game that he really shouldn't lose due to some type of whatever, whether it was going for it, trying to run the clock out and gets fumbled and then you lose. Like last year at Syracuse, Georgia Tech kind of just punked them out, but Syracuse was a game where they shouldn't really have lost that one. They were up multiple touchdowns and they ended up just blowing the lead. Like I said in my preview, I coming into this year just couldn't fully buy into Miami because one, I didn't know really about the defense, and two, just because their coach Mario Cristobal, he's always due for one. He's always due for one. I'm not saying this is the day, but I'm just saying that's something to look out for. But with all that being said, Miami, they've looked impressive this year. Carson Beck, I've been high on Carson Beck. I never jumped off the Carson Beck train, man. I know a lot of people did when he left Georgia. A lot of people did last year. I'm gonna beat whatever the saying is, beat this drum or whatever. I think Carson Beck is an exceptional player. What kind of went and unfolded at Georgia last year was not solely on him. He had a terrible offensive line, no running game. Wide receivers led the country in drop passes. And so far in these first two games, my biggest question mark with the offense of Miami was going to be the wide receiving group because they had to replace a lot of production last year from the wide receivers. And so far this year, it looks like they've been more than able to come in and replace the guys from last year. Obviously against Notre Dame, they stepped up big, and Carson Beck, he's playing some great football. This is a veteran guy. He's been playing with poise. Obviously, their last game, I think they played like Bethune or something like that. They just obviously wiped the floor with them. But that Notre Dame game is still there, man, and they looked good against Notre Dame. The defensive line of Miami, I think, will need to show up. Ruben Bain, he's a monster. And I think the overall defense, I think this is a good game to test Miami. I think this is a good game. This is a game where they're coming off of a bye, playing a nobody. This is South Florida. They've also obviously never had to respect South Florida. I think this is a good game to kind of get a view on where Miami's program is kind of mentally. Is this a game that they're just going to kind of walk into, stumble into, and not take it seriously and end up barely beating South Florida? Or is this a game where they're going to say, hey, no, we're Miami, we're for real, we're serious this year, and kind of, step on their necks? I'm going to be very interested to see how they approach this game. South Florida, obviously, Byron Brown, the quarterback, he's been playing incredible football. This is a well-coached team. They've just been getting it done, man. They have just been getting it done. I think the line right now is sitting at 17.5. Honestly, when I saw this line at first, I was a little surprised. I thought this was a big number, and I do still think this is a big number. I gotta take South Florida to cover this, man. I think, like I said earlier, I think they know what's at stake. I think they know they have a great opportunity to do something. Even if they don't win, which I don't think they're going to win, I think Miami's going to win, and I even think Miami's going to win by double digits. But I do think South Florida can make this competitive for most of the game. I think this could be a game where Miami kind of they're fighting it out throughout the game, and then towards the end of the game, they score a couple plays, a couple things happen, and eventually end up winning. But I do like South Florida to cover. I just think 17.5 is a big number for a team who's been playing extremely well, and they have some talent, and it's gonna be tough for I think it's gonna be tough for Miami to stop Byron Brown. He's a true dual threat guy. He can make plays with his legs. He's been making plays with his arms as well. So I do think South Florida does potentially keep it competitive. I still think Miami wins. I still think Miami wins by double digits. But you got to think, Miami could win 31-17, and the spread is still under 7, and the final score is still under 17. So I think it's going to be one of those games where Miami does win by double digits. But I do have South Florida to cover the spread at 17.5. Those are going to be all the games I cover in depth in terms of my locks and my picks for the week. I do kind of just want to rapid fire through a couple of interesting games that we do have this week, just to kind of give my quick initial takes and to see just kind of what I like on it. Wisconsin and Alabama do play this week. I do like Alabama. I just don't think Wisconsin, man, they're on their backup quarterback at this point. They got a tough schedule. Luke Fickell, I think he's in year 2 or 3 there, year 3, and it just hasn't clicked or connected yet. I don't know. I just don't really know what Wisconsin is doing. So I do think Alabama does win that game. And I do think they win it pretty easily. Let's see. We got UTEP and Texas. I think Arch obviously has another bounce back week. I think he's gonna, kind of get rolling with the offense a little more. And I think if you're Texas and you're Arch, all you want to do is just play a nice, clean game from start to finish. Don't worry about anything else. Just go in there, try and get your flow in, and just play a nice, clean game. Because I know a lot of people have been talking about Arch's mechanics have been a little off. So, honestly, if I'm Texas and Arch and Sark, that's all I want to see. Vanderbilt and South Carolina, that is a sneaky, underrated good game. I think that's going to be – they both obviously play Virginia Tech. Vandy looked good against Virginia Tech. South Carolina not so much against Virginia Tech. I think this is going to be a nice game to see kind of where these two programs are at. I think Vandy could very well be ranked right now, but they're not. Diego Pavia, obviously a stud. I like South Carolina in this, but I think this is going to be a tough game, physical game. But, yeah, I do like South Carolina slightly. Before we get out of here, I just wanted to take a look at the AP Week 3 Top 25. Just touch over a couple changes real quick, just to see what the voters did this week. I know some of you have probably heard how one of the voters didn't even like watch the game, and she put Florida 2 spots ahead, and she didn't even have South Florida ranked. When you know, and then she went on live or something like that, and basically said like didn't really give a good explanation on why she did that. Which is wild to me. We all knew the AP poll was a little flawed. But to have people not watching these games vote on it is beyond me. But that's a conversation for a different day. Ohio State still number one. Penn State number two. LSU still number three. Oregon jumps over to four after absolutely blasting Oklahoma State. Um, don't don't piss off Dan Lanning, man. Don't piss off Dan Lanning. Colorado can tell you that already. Miami at 5, Georgia at 6, Texas at 7, Notre Dame at 8, Illinois jumping up to 9 in the top 10 after that win against Duke. Florida State at 10. Offense is still looking explosive. South Carolina at 11. Clemson jumps down to 12. They need to get that offense together, man. Oklahoma, they jump up to 13 after that impressive win against Michigan. John Mateer looks legit. Iowa State at 14, Tennessee at 15, Texas A&M at 16, Ole Miss at 17, USF jumping up to 18 after that impressive win against Florida. I think they're still a little too low. I think as of right now they have the 2 best wins in the country, back-to-back ranked teams at the time they were playing. I wouldn't be mad if USF, honestly was closer to like 13, 14. But nonetheless, Alabama at 19. Utah, man. Utah, I think they're a little too low too, man. I think Utah is for real. I think they're going to win the Big 12. Utah at 20, Texas Tech at 21. That's going to be a hell of a game next week. Utah versus Texas Tech in Salt Lake. We got Indiana at 22. Michigan drops to 23. I think Michigan's going to be fine. Bryce Underwood, he's a young guy. I think that was a valuable game he played, and I think they're going to be good. And then Auburn and Mizzou rounding out the top 25. Mizzou is looking impressive. Let me know if you guys think any of these teams are ranked too high, if they're ranked too low, who's missing off of here, who should be on here, who shouldn't. And look below for my picks if you do want to tail. We had a good week last week, went 4-2. Hoping to go 5-0 this week, or 4-1. I'll take 4-1. But hoping to have another good week. Another weekend of college football is upon us. Like, subscribe, comment, share. We're trying to grow this page, man. I love college football. I love talking about college football. I hope you guys love it as much as I do. So I appreciate you guys for listening. Enjoy the week 3 slate.